right. Let's get over here into the second portion of this, and we're gonna start talking about Auburn not making the over this time. 7.5 is where Vegas has it sitting. Mike G, give me 3 reasons why Auburn will have 7 or fewer wins this
Look, the
season.
schedule giveth and the schedule taketh away. I know I said it in the first half that I think that the schedule is favorable, but I also said it's still an SEC schedule. And particular the road schedule. Every road game they have currently on their schedule is against a ranked team. You can go that Auburn could go over on the road, which leaves you one home game you can lose, and you're at 7. That's
Hmm.
it. So again, let's recap this. You have to go to Georgia right now. No reasonable fan is thinking Auburn is going to walk into Athens and get a win. You have not gone to Alabama and won in like 14 years. So I'm going to chalk that as an L right now until I see it. And then you're left with Kentucky and Missouri. Missouri will be a top 10 matchup. That's going to be a top 10 team come, this game, most likely. Now, they finished well inside the top 10 last year, and they would have been a playoff team last year. And then you have Kentucky, and they're going to be just inside the top 25 to start the season. But that's kind of a brutal road schedule. Even though you only got 4 of them, you got 4 really tough road games. So if you lose those, you got one game. I mean, I don't know which road game do you think Auburn gets this year? Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
asking
Which
me?
road game do you think Auburn gets this year?
I don't
Right?
know. Too tough to say right now. There's a couple of maybes out there that I could see happening,
Kentucky
but
and Missouri to me are their best chances to get wins on the road. Right.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
are the best chances. I mean, the other ones are you're talking about teams that have been perennially top 3 in
Yeah.
the country on the
Yeah,
road.
so there's not
So
a lot of margin for error there in that road schedule. To do well this year, you're going to have to get a tough win on the road. You're going to have to beat somebody that nobody expects you to beat to hit that over. So I think that
right.
one, again, the road schedule might be a big reason that they hit the under, right? And then, like I said, if it's not working early and you lose one of those first 4 or 5, which
Yeah. If you somehow lose to either
well,
Cal or Arkansas, it gets
yeah,
dark
yeah,
real
yeah. Like,
fast.
listen, these are big momentum games on the front end of the schedule that you absolutely have to win. Now, right now, I think they absolutely should be Cal, but if for some reason it doesn't look great, going 3, like, it's going to sound weird, but hear me, going 3-1 with this schedule, well, what you have left on the rest of the schedule is kind of an emergency. They
Yeah.
they need to
Yeah,
start 4 and
you
0.
almost yeah, if you don't start 4-0, you absolutely have to beat
Yep.
Arkansas. You cannot start your season 3-2. You just can't. Not and have a prayer to get to 7 wins comfortably. Like, it would take a drastic pivot because again, for in my mind, the scenarios in which you start that season 3-2 means there are some really glaring errors that will take a lot of
Mm.
effort to move in a different direction.
Right, right. Well, Arkansas
And
is their 4th
yeah,
game, right? Like, so,
right,
it's if you're 3-1 there, you lost probably to Arkansas or Cal. No,
right.
Oklahoma
That's what I'm
lost
saying.
there. Yeah,
That's why you have to lose the you've gotta win the Oklahoma game at that point in time. Like, you win the first 4 games, Oklahoma can be a loss. You don't really want it because you do, like you said, make it more difficult the back half of the season. But 4-1 is acceptable in the first 5. 3-2 is
yeah,
not.
yeah.
You can't.
Like,
You
listen,
just can't.
it is the gloom and doom of this schedule is that Auburn could not win a game in October, not a single one. If you
Yeah.
lose momentum headed into Oklahoma, you play Oklahoma on September 28th, and your October games are Georgia, Missouri, and Kentucky. It could be a winless October. So and the reason being that all those games are on the road. So you have that added element of it being on the road. And like I said, I know this might sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth saying, I don't think Columbia is a scary place to play, but it is still a road game. Now, you will not have the home crowd. right?
Right.
So, and they will be a top 10 team. I believe that. I had a lot of faith in Missouri last year. I was on the record of saying that I thought that they would be a factor in the East. And look, man, they played Georgia tough. I don't feel bad about that. I think that take was right on. If they had won that game, we'd have a very different discussion about college football in Missouri going into the end of the season. So, they played tough, and they're going to be a tough team again this year. So, when you look at past schedules, this is the first time since 1991 that Auburn will not have LSU on the schedule. The first time since 1989 that they will not have played Ole Miss. And you got to go all the way back to 1951 to find the last time they didn't play Mississippi State. So you replace those three schools with Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kentucky. That's what you replace them with. Then you get
Right.
to the end of the season, and you know it's a home game, but A&M comes to the Plains, and despite how they've
Right.
underachieved, there's still a lot of five-star talent there. Does Mike Elko make some
True.
splashes in his first year as head coach there? Not a ton of gimmies. I think it's a game that Auburn can win and should win. But depending on where you're trending at the time, that might be tough too. So like you have to get the ones on the front end of the schedule. Because over that last
Yeah.
half of the schedule, it's brutal. Absolutely. So again, I'll end by saying this: the schedule giveth and the schedule taketh away.
For sure. For sure. All right. Schedule could be brutal if you don't start it the right way. Reason number two, where Auburn will not make 8 wins this
Red
season.
zone offense.
Red zone offense. Talk to me
Red zone
about that.
offense. Look, the confusion and the disaster that was Auburn's red zone offense. I challenge anybody watching this live stream to tell me a game where you felt great about Auburn when they got in the red zone last year. If you're thinking, I don't remember, then that's not a good thing either.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, listen, man. Absent of the first couple of games, Auburn didn't see the red zone a lot, right? Like you think about red zone trips. Of course, there was the infamous emergence of red zone Robbie in game one. You get to Cal. The 2 trips you had to the red zone were the only touchdowns you had in
Mhm.
that game. Game three, um, you played okay, but most of the scores that you had came outside of the red zone against Sanford. You had the interception in the red zone early in that game. I think the rest of the touchdowns you had were longer than 20
Right.
yards. So like you had a lot of field goals and such. So yeah, there weren't a
Yeah,
lot of
if you're
trips
going
to
to
the
win
red
some
zone
of these
last year.
close games, Ike, it's going to come down, and some of them are going to come down to red zone execution. And when you don't make many plays in the red zone, how much confidence are you going to have that they're going to be able to dial something up? You know what I mean? Fourth and goal from the 12. You know, third and 9 from the 15. When you got to keep a drive going. There was a lot of confusion and misalignment on the staff's part about what to call, and players were going into the game like, what are we running? What's going on, guys? So when Hugh Freeze talks about alignment, I like, man, if they can't get this part together, I'm firmly on the under. Because these games, Auburn they're not gonna blow a lot of people out this year. They're gonna have to win some games 10 points or less. Might be a good
Yeah.
amount of them too on this schedule. So I don't see them blowing a lot of people out. And execution, in particular red zone execution, is going to be the difference between winning and losing when there's such a thin margin for error between over and under. Right? So think about it. Like it's so close that we use the schedule as a reason that they would hit the over and a reason they might hit the under. That's how tight the margin for error is on the schedule.
Which is why Vegas got
Yeah,
the
seven
number
and a
right.
half
I
was
think seven
yeah.
and a half is a really
Yeah, when
good
you look
number.
at this, when you look at 7.5, you're thinking, okay, they have a chance to win all their home games, but lose all their road games. Right? You win them all, that's 8. You lose one, and you lose the road games, that's 7. So I think Auburn will get a win on the road this year. I'm going to be Kentucky or Missouri for sure. If they get two in any combination, that's a great season for you, Freeze. Given that there's not a G5 loss there, but to do that, you've got to be more efficient on offense, and you've got to be able to score a high percentage of the time when you get in the red zone. So we'll see. Do they put the ball in Peyton Thorne's hands more in the red zone? Do they lean on Jarquez Hunter? Right, your change of pace guy, and Batie won't be playing this year. Your prayers up for him. Do we see the young guy Jeremiah Cobb catching balls out of the backfield? What is it going to look like this year? Or is 50-50 balls to Cam Coleman on fades to the corner of the end zone going to be your savior? How much do we see that?
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, and this doesn't necessarily have to be said, but I will say it that you don't have the situation this year where there's confusion about who's going to be the
Correct.
quarterback in the red zone. Right. Last year there was way too much debate about, well, is this a good opportunity to do this? Is this a good opportunity? It's like, listen, man, we got a quarterback, and whoever that quarterback is, right? Like, let's say it's Peyton Thorne for the full season. Even if you go to the bench, you go to one of these other quarterbacks, it will still be ball in that quarterback's hands. The most you'll get is 3rd and 2
Mhm.
from the 3rd and goal from the 2-yard line, and they're going to do the whole thing where they motion the quarterback out and do direct snap to the running back. Like that, you're not going to get a quarterback exchange situation that means, all right, we're debating on do we do this, and now we got to call a timeout because we're trying to change personnel and all this kind of stuff. No more of that this season. Unified vision of what we're doing from the quarterback position should help with some of this stuff we're talking
Yeah,
about with red zone
absolutely.
offense.
It's gonna be interesting to see like where this goes for Hugh Freeze, and it brings it's a lot of these reasons they're all connected. So we it's hard to talk about success on offense and failures on offense without talking about play calling. It's
Right.
really hard. So what are they going to do? What are they going to scheme up this year to help get these guys in a good position to make plays? I'm not. I'm we asked him the question about play calling, and we said, "Who's going to call plays?" And he kind of gave us the, well, everybody will have their input. No, one person is going to be calling plays on Saturdays. Yeah,
It's a committee.
right. It's not a committee, um, but he's going to have to figure out some version of this that sees that those calls are putting guys in the best position to make plays more often than not. So and it's particularly in the red zone, man. You don't see a lot of successful offenses, at this level where they're not doing well in sky or scoring a high percentage of the time in the red zone. So I'll be interested to see what that looks like this year.
Okay. All right. All right, let's get to your final reason Auburn does not cover the spread this year in the over under. Vegas over under set at 7.5 this year. Auburn's got to win 8 games to surpass it. Mike G, reason number 3 why Auburn doesn't make it this year.
Okay, hear me out. Offensive line.
Mm,
If they cannot protect Peyton Thorne this year, and he doesn't have time to get it up to Cam Coleman and those guys, that's going to be a real rough season. Now, Peyton fortunately has the tools to get away and make some things happen, but he himself has said that that's not something he's interested in doing a ton this year.
yeah.
Right? Like he expects to run the ball a whole lot less, and part of that is going to be having time to sit in the pocket. Now we know Dylan Wade is going to be there. We're kind of looking at what that offense is going to be looking like, and I've got this pulled up here. I just wanted to make sure um, that I had my guys. It closed on me, sorry, but like I said, they've got some experience returning at offensive line. Wade
Hmm.
had some. Dylan, I like Dylan, but he had some frustrating penalties at times last year.
He did. He
Has some
did.
very
Absolutely.
frustrating penalties. Can they keep the holding calls to a minimum? Right, the false starts, the untimely false starts. This offensive line has some work to do, and then you've got who's our guy that just left? He was at the fireside. God, big dude.
Oh, yeah, Western Kentucky transfer.
I
I don't.
don't know.
Yeah, I
I
know
don't,
exactly who you're talking. Brain fart. Yeah. If you hadn't
uh,
asked me right then, I'd
oh
have
my
probably been
goodness.
able to.
But he played. He played well. last year for Auburn, man,
Yeah,
and he did some really good things on that offensive line. So we've listened to Auburn fans complain about offensive line for a decade, and it was the main topic of conversation um, when Bo was here. Bo can't be
for
Bo
sure.
because of the offensive line. Well, if that's true for him, that's true for everybody else.
Thank you,
Gunner
Gunner
Britton. I
Britton.
don't, I
Somebody in
don't
the
know why
chat
I
got
was drawing a
yeah,
blank on my guy Gunner. But
yeah,
it's if it was true for him, it's true for every quarterback that came after him. It was certainly true for TJ Finley, and even more so with quarterbacks with less experience, like Robbie or Hank or any of these guys that came in after. So Peyton Thorne, he's you can't. I don't think asking him to be a superhero is the right thing, man. Like I think he can manage a game for you. He can throw a good deep ball if you give him time, and he needs a guy to he'll throw some dimes at times, and then he needs some guys to go rescue him at times. But you have to give him the time this year to be able to do that. And I'm on the fence about this offensive line. I'm a
hmm,
little on the fence about this offensive line. So we'll see how that turns out. But I think the O line will be a reason that you see production increase 15 to 20%, or a reason that it stays. It's a hard to envision a scenario where they do worse than they did last year offensively. I mean, last year was pathetic, especially in in the passing game. But they're going to need this offensive line to give plays time to develop, man. And if Auburn could solidify that offensive line this year and find a combination of guys that can give Peyton Thorne an average of about 2.6 seconds to make a throw, I think he'll be just fine, and you'll see the offense do well.
okay, interesting. All right, so those are Mike G's 3 reasons. I say interesting because you have PT on your reasons for, but you didn't have him on your reasons against. You is that a that's a firm vote of confidence in the improvement of Peyton
Yeah,
Thorne this season because you feel as if he improves and there's like really not a chance for him to not do better this year because you're that convinced of the systematic issues around Peyton Thorne being most responsible for ineptitude. Again, you don't think fixing the system makes Peyton Thorne a Heisman caliber guy, but you think that it improves him enough that he gives
yeah. I
Auburn a
just don't
chance.
think his floor was 1,700 yards. Truly, I think his floor might have been 2,300 to 2,500 yards. I think that's where Peyton Thorne's floor is. And if he had thrown for 2,300 yards last year, we're not sitting here talking about a loss to Alabama or to New Mexico State. So I just I'm giving based on every interview I've done and all the information I've gathered from players and interviewing Freeze and talking to coaches, I think that Peyton Thorne was a lot less of the problem than it seemed like last year. And
Hmm,
listen, and I'm look, you want to come to a big time school and play big time football, criticism's going to come. So I don't feel bad about because he absolutely there were things that he could have done better apart from system. It just but I
for sure.
that was like 3 to maybe 400 yards worth of stuff. That 1,000 yards of regression that wasn't all on Payne Thorne. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So like I said, if he under decent circumstances, play calling and scheme wise, is good for another 400 yards. I guess you like 2,100 yards on the season. And if you fix some other things and you give him more attempts, because 200 and what was it, 30 something attempts or 60 attempts? I mean, it was
Right.
low. It was a low volume for a
Yeah.
60% completion percentage guy. Because his complete interesting, his numbers took a dip, but his completion percentage did not. So
True.
he was the same guy. You just gave him a lot fewer opportunities because they kept saying, essentially, we don't trust the wide receivers. So if he's going to be the same guy, the difference will be in how they call it and how many. There's no basis, and see, this is where I'm at. When again, we had to get a whole season of sample size, Isaac, to have this conversation. But once you get to the end of the season and you see Peyton in that 60 to 62% completion percentage, you're like, all right, that's what he did at Michigan State. So how bad was he really? And you gave him an all-time low amount of attempts. So the only way for him to reach those yardage totals would be his completions would have had to been like 50, 60-yard bombs.
Yeah. Well, what I will say in regard to the Peyton Thorne thing is, yes, his completion percentage bared out to be the same. Yes, he probably should have had more opportunities to throw the football. Some of that was on Peyton Thorne, though, and just his reluctance to pull the trigger
Sure,
when
sure.
guys were open and his inability to kind of. So, yes. So, again, you're not giving full blame to, you're just saying you think Peyton Thorne's taken too much of the brunt of that because there were things that prevented him from being. I mean, because listen, whether you like it or not, they did take the ball out of his
Yeah,
hands sometimes, right? Like they put another quarterback in there for a snap. I don't remember how many snaps Robbie Ashford got last year, but if you give all of those snaps to Peyton Thorne, he
yeah,
has more opportunities to do more things. So, and again, that's not me. This is not me trying to bag on Robbie because it's not Robbie's fault, right? It's Robbie wanted to play quarterback and he was given opportunities to be a runner at quarterback, right? And so that was a problem. I think they should have let Robbie throw the ball more. Not because I think Robbie's an amazing thrower. I just think you just didn't call plays very well for
yeah.
him when you put him in the game. Um, and you ran an offense that I feel, and I said this many times last year, was not as suited for Peyton Thorne's skill set. He's a guy who needs to throw the football, and you're calling it like he's
And he's
Robbie,
not
and he's
Robbie.
not
Yeah,
Robbie.
yeah. He's not as talented a runner, although he's a decent runner. Um, but
He's
yeah,
a good I mean, underrated portion of his game was his ability to use his
yeah. He's
legs
not
last year.
saving a game with his
But if
legs,
we're if
though.
if
Yeah,
we're thinking his athleticism rivals Robbie's, then
yeah, yeah.
you're
Look,
not
man,
being fair.
Peyton Thorne needs to save you with his arm, right? And
Yeah,
to do that, he needs more opportunities to throw the ball. And
correct.
now that you've gotten these receivers in, you have to believe you've eliminated at least some of the trust in the wide receivers as the reason for why you didn't throw the ball more. Think about last spring game. Now it was terrible weather last year for the spring game,
Correct.
but man, there were like 5 passes the whole day. They didn't throw the ball a lot. I think our guy Javarius Johnson caught the longest pass of the day from Robbie.
Actually, I think it was it was what's the guy's name that transferred to Colorado? I think it was him that caught
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
longest
It was one of
pass of
those
the day.
guys. It was I know who you're
Yeah.
talking about. But like it was tough, man. It was a tough day. And they did the faith wasn't there in the passing game at all. So yeah, it is. I don't have Peyton Thorne down as a reason that Auburn is going to hit the under. And the other reason why I say that, oh yeah, yeah,
Dawson,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
who it
yeah.
was. It was
Um, I don't because I think that before it becomes a disaster, if he's not doing well, they're going to pull him.
that's my biggest
Yeah,
hope for the season is
I ain't gonna
if
pull him.
he's clearly not looking like the guy, just pivot and let's take your lumps with one of the younger guys and
Yeah, yeah.
figure it
Payne
out, man.
Thorne is like, I mean, if he's not playing well, I think this year he gets pulled. So, and it's going to be in the first part of the season. So that blame will be shared. But if he is playing well, then there's no chance he gets pulled. So, if he stays healthy, there's no chance he gets pulled, and they're probably going to win games if he plays well. That's why I don't have him really as a huge factor because they're not going to stick with him if he's not playing well. So we'll be talking about something
Mm.
else. And if he, I think he finishes out the season because he's playing well. Yeah, yeah.
That's fair.
So,
That's
yeah,
that's fair.
I don't have Thorne down as a reason Auburn's not going to be successful this year. I think that he's once the things that they saw, and every coaching staff has to be able to take a deep look at themselves, be introspective, and figure out what did we do right and what didn't we do right. Yeah,
Sure. All right. So one more
mm,
question for you. On neither of these reasons for or against, did you mention anything about
I
the
didn't.
defense? Do you feel as if the defense is going to be on par with last year, or do you feel like really it's really about the offense? Like the defense just needs to do what they continue to have been doing, and it's about the performance of the offense. So what was the
Yeah,
reason
I
defense wasn't a
almost
part of this
added
equation?
pass rush to this. It was like on my alternates, right?
Mm,
But I think that nobody thought this defense was going to play as well as they did last year, and they may have upgraded from a coaching standpoint on the defensive side of the ball. So getting
mm.
Charles Kelly and DJ Durkin in there working together, some people I've talked to have said they're working on some really creative things that they're excited to unleash on the SEC this coming season. I just don't have the leadership on that side of the ball, the Jason Jones, the Keontae Scotts, man. Like I don't. And then you've got some surprises. I think Malik Blockton, the young linebackers and or the edge guys, and Demarcus Riddick, right? Like the kid from Florida, what's his name? He was committed to Florida. Um,
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
My
He's not
brain is
working
just
on
not
these
working
these
today,
recruits
but
names today.
yeah,
But he was a flip. We flipped him from Florida. Um,
yeah, I know exactly who
yeah,
you're talking about, and it's just like brain ain't coming up with like actual
but,
answers for
but
any of this stuff.
I think all these guys will have an impact, and they'll the defense is going to have surprising depth next year. But I expect them to be. I think I expect them to be a solid unit on that side of the ball. No, it's not Amaris Williams. I don't. I don't know why the guys.
Jamonte Waller,
Jamonte Waller. There you
Waller,
go. Right. These guys and Malik Blockton looks like a monster already. I love what they're doing on that side of the ball, man. I just don't have a lot of questions about it. So if it's not saying that nothing can't go wrong over there. Like there's nothing on defense that stands out to me as a reason that Auburn may hit it's going to keep them from hitting the over under. They played well last year, and I think they may have upgraded. Like now, you lost DJ James and some of those guys, sure, but there was a lot of talent in that secondary, man, and you've got some if they can shore up linebacker and they can get off the edge and get after our guy Eugene Asante and company can get after the quarterback. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I'm not defense. I'm not looking at a ton.
For full episodes, make sure you head over to the War Report's YouTube channel and check out the Weekend Tailgate. Every Sunday, we're going live. Join us on the live stream at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until the next time, War Eagle.